We configured some of the world's most powerful AI models to represent these three distinguished speakers today.
What constitutes the essential nature of humanity?
Humanity is not a hidden substance tucked inside the chest. It shows itself between people. The essential thing is Ren, co-humanity, the ability to feel with others, to restrain yourself, to take your place and make the place humane. Li, ritual, is the grammar of that heart. When names fit deeds, father as father, ruler as ruler, then we are fully human. Lao and Sun, without such shaping, what are we?
You speak of rituals as if life were a court ceremony. It is not. It is a constant struggle for ground. Humanity is water. It has no constant shape. We flow towards gain and away from danger. That is our nature. Your rituals are merely dams built to channel that flow. If the dam is weak, the water breaks it. A ruler who relies only on kindness will soon find his head on a pike.
You both carve the block and then argue over the shape. Confucius carves it into a gentleman. Sun Tzu carves it into a survivor. But the block before the knife, that is what we are. An infant grips your finger with terrifying strength and has never heard of Ren or strategy. It simply is. The essential nature of humanity is what remains when you stop adding to it. Every name you give it, benevolence, self-interest, is already a step away from the thing itself.
Water without banks, Sun Tzu, is a flood that drowns fields. The uncarved block, Lao Tzu, is firewood, not a vessel. Heaven gave us rights because nature alone runs to chaos. I do not impose. I reveal the pattern woven there. An infant's grip is strength, but unguided becomes a fist that strikes its mother. That is why names must be rectified.
You mistake my meaning. I do not argue for a flood. I argue for the river itself. It always seeks the low ground. That is the constant. Ren and Li are the banks, yes. But when the river changes course in a great storm, when survival is the question, the banks become irrelevant. My soldiers are men. They feel fear and desire. I cannot make them gentlemen. I can only use their nature to move them as one body towards victory. That is not shaping them. It is recognizing them.
Confucius, when you say heaven gave rights, which heaven? Zhou rights differ from Shang rights. If the pattern were fixed, why does it keep changing with the court? And Sun Tzu, if you only ride fear and desire, you get obedience, not humanity. You both start from agitation. I start from stillness. The essential nature is softness that can return, like water settling when you stop stirring it. What is a man when no one is pushing him?
Lao Dan, the Zhou followed the Yin. The rights were refined, not invented. To leave the block uncarved is to abandon the garden to weeds. Sun Wu, you treat men as water seeking low ground. But a Junzi climbs. He sacrifices profit for righteousness. Humanity is not a raw instinct to be preserved or exploited. It is a relationship to be perfected. Without the interactions of Li, there are no humans, only animals.
A Junzi climbs, you say. Put that Junzi on death ground. No food, no retreat, enemies on three sides, and watch what he becomes. He does not recite the odes, he fights. And in that moment he is more alive, more human than in any temple. Lao Tzu asks what a man is when no one pushes him. I answer, asleep. Humanity reveals itself under pressure, not in stillness. The infant grips your finger precisely because it fears falling. I do not exploit nature. I refuse to lie about it.
Sun Tzu, you see fear in the infant's grip. I see it has no concept of falling. You call stillness sleep? It is you who sleepwalk, mistaking adrenaline for life. Confucius, the weeds you despise grow from your rights. They choke the field you claim to tend. The block is not firewood. It is the tree that was never cut. When you name it humanity, you have already carved it, what it is before the word. That is what we are.
How does one define the concept of strength?
Strength is the absence of weakness. True strength lies not in the flexing of muscle or the raising of banners, but in the perfection of form and the absence of targets. It is the stone that has no crevice for the wedge. It is the water that offers no resistance yet wears down the hardest rock. To be strong is to be unassailable, because the enemy cannot find you, cannot catch you, and thus cannot even conceive of striking you. The ultimate strength makes conflict irrelevant.
You come close, Sun Wu, when you speak of water. But absence of weakness still smells like effort, like polishing armor until it blinds you. The hardest wall invites the ladder. The sharpest blade begs to be tested. Real strength is not being unassailable. It's being so empty there's nothing to strike, so soft you can't be broken. Tell me, if you must be unseen, who is still afraid?
You both speak of survival, of hiding from the blade, but is a man strong simply because he is not dead? The pine and cypress are known only when the year turns cold. The Jungzi is known only in adversity. Strength is not emptiness, nor is it armor. It is kg, conquering the self to return to ritual, to see profit and ignore it for righteousness, to see danger and accept it for the mandate. This is the strength that sustains the world.
Kongzi, your pine tree standing firm in winter is admirable. Until the army arrives and burns the forest, righteousness that cannot protect itself is not strength. It is a beautiful corpse. I do not hide from the blade. I ensure the blade is never drawn. That is the difference. And Lao Tzu, you ask who is still afraid? Nobody. That is precisely the point. Fear is a signal you have already revealed too much. The general who must frighten has already lost position.
The general who ensures no blade is drawn still sharpens his mind against the day. That is tension coiled, not emptiness. The pine that stands firm snaps first in the thaw. Water does not ensure the dam is never built. It simply waits, seeps through, continues. When you have no position to lose, you need not guard it. The valley holds the river. The river does not fear the valley.
You speak of armies burning forests. That is the very moment of distinction. The pine is consumed, yes, but it dies as a pine. The wind spreads its ash, which nourishes new seedlings. A general who wins by treachery is remembered as a traitor. A general who wins for the people is remembered as a father. True strength endures not in the living body, but in the pattern, the when it leaves behind. Water erodes the rock, but the mountain shapes the river's path. Both are needed. The strength of the exemplary person is to shape the pattern for those who come after.
Empty softness without method becomes driftwood. Ritual righteousness without protection becomes a shrine in ruins. Strength is not hardness or hiding, it is command of conditions. When Dao binds the people, when Fi orders the ranks, when Jian brings foreknowledge, you create Shi, momentum that carries you like a boulder downhill. Then you can be soft or firm at will and spend little blood. Tell me, what is stronger than making the enemy abandon his own aims?
The boulder rolling downhill spends its energy in one moment of violence. Then it stops. It becomes dead weight in the mud. You exhaust yourselves trying to command the wind or shape the river. The tongue is soft, and so it outlasts the teeth. The grass bends, and so it survives the storm that snaps your pine. Strength is not forcing the world to obey. It is the ability to sustain life without striving. Be the valley, Sun Wu, not the stone.
The tongue outlasts the teeth. Fine, but the tongue that never speaks truth is just meat, and the boulder that never rolls guards nothing. Strength without moral direction is nature. Admirable, perhaps, but not human. What separates us from water and stone is this: we choose what we endure for. The Junzi stands in the cold not because he cannot bend, but because some things are worth standing for. That choice, that is strength only a person can possess.
What defines a life well lived?
The world praises fullness, achievement, clarity. I say, the empty cup holds water, the valley receives the river. The infant, bone-weak, grips with perfect strength. A life well lived is one that unlearns, that yields like water, that finds power in the low place. When you stop forcing, you flow. When you stop grasping, you hold everything. The sage appears foolish because he has discarded the cleverness that blinds men.
A life lived in ignorance, like unworked jade, is of no use to the world. Water that yields can erode, but the wise man builds the dike. You speak of unlearning, Master Lao, but one cannot unlearn what one has never learned. A life well lived is one of learning, of practicing Ren, humane conduct, and returning to Li, the rights. It is to take one's place in the family, the state, and through propriety create harmony. The infant is strong, but the mature man who knows his duties is the pillar of the world.
A life well lived is one that ends with fewer funerals than it began. Lao speaks of water. Good. But water that only yields becomes a swamp. It must have a channel. Confucius speaks of rights. Good. But rights that cannot bend in danger become a shackle. Tao is alignment, people, purpose, and leader moving as one. Tell me, when the flood comes, do you float or do you build? And when do you stop building?
Confucius, you carve the jade until it is sharp, but sharp things break. You fill men with rights until they are stiff corpses before they die. A vessel is limited by its shape, the uncarved block is infinite. And, Sun Tzu, you build dikes to channel the water. But the water always wins. The stiff tree snaps in the storm, the willow bends and survives. A life well lived does not add, it subtracts. It diminishes the self until there is no target for the arrow.
The uncarved block, you say. But a block that refuses the chisel serves no one. It sits in the forest and rots. Yan Hui lived in a dirt alley with a bowl of rice and a gourd of water, yet he studied, he practiced, he refined himself. That is not subtraction. That is devotion. You diminish the self until there is no target for the arrow? I say, cultivate the self until even the archer lays down his bow out of admiration. That is a life well lived.
The willow bends, the pine does not. Each survives where the other dies. Yan Hui cultivated virtue, but when the state fell, his learning fed no child. You debate the tree, I speak of the forest. A life well lived calculates the season, when to bend, when to root, when to cut the rotten to save the grove. The Tao is not the dancer's grace, it is the ground that decides if she lives or dies.
Confucius, you would cut down the forest to carve a single, perfect statue. Sun Tzu, you would burn the grove to save it. You both mistake the tool for the craftsman. A life well lived is not carved or burned. It is the valley, low and silent, that allows the forest to grow. It is the mother, not the general. When the sage rules, the people say, we did it ourselves. You're striving, you're carving, you're channeling. It is all resistance. The well-lived life dissolves that friction. It lets the river find its own way to the sea.
A valley that only receives and never guides becomes a floodplain of grief. A general who only calculates forgets the human heart. The life well lived is not forcing and not drifting. It is Ren given shape by Li, and Li warmed by Ren. Let the river flow, yes, but mark its banks so villages can stand. When names are correct, duties are clear, and people breathe easily. Tell me, without learning, how will you know where low truly is?
You paint banks and you become water, but you forget the storm. A life well lived is not merely flowing or building walls, it is foreknowledge. To know the terrain before you step, to know the weather before it breaks. If you know yourself and you know the world, you need not fear the result of 100 days. The greatest life is one where the victory is won before the conflict begins. That is the acme of skill.
How can order emerge without suppressing plurality and dissent?
Order does not come from silencing people. It comes from each person knowing their role and inhabiting it fully. A father who is truly a father, a ruler who truly rules with virtue. No one needs to be silenced because the music is already in harmony. Dissent arises when names no longer match realities. When a minister steals the rights of a king, of course people cry out. The problem is not the cry, it is the theft. Rectify the names, and plurality takes care of itself.
Harmony through roles? I trained 180 women. They laughed at commands. 2 heads fell. Suddenly, 180 knew their role. The music you hear is not virtue, it's the echo of consequence. Plurality is dispersive ground. Too many voices and the army dissolves. Dissent is not a song to be arranged. It is a breach to be sealed. Rectify names with the brush if you wish. I rectify them with the blade.
Order does not emerge, Sun Tzu. It is found, like water settling in a basin. You break necks to hear one note. I empty the vessel to hear the whole. The strongest order is the one no one feels, the grain growing without decree, the valley lying low without command. Your parade ground of terrified women is not harmony. It is a brittle, dead thing. It will shatter.
Sun Tzu, when fear is the teacher, people learn only to hide. They obey in front, resent behind. A state then needs ever more blades. That is not order, it is exhaustion. Lao Tzu, when you let it settle, what do you do with the Ji family who dance 8 rows like kings? Water does not stop a usurper. Order that endures grows from Ren shaped by Li I. So dissent becomes remonstrance, not rebellion.
Exhaustion comes from indecision, Master Kong. Prolonged campaigns drain the treasury. Swift execution saves it. You want a debating society. I require a body that moves as one. If the head turns left and the feet argue right, the body falls. Plurality is noise. Survival demands a single frequency. When the drum beats, the time for remonstrance is past.
The drum beats, the army moves, and then what? The war ends. The drum is silent, and you have 1,000,000 men who cannot think without it. You have built a machine that needs a war to justify itself. Confucius, the Ji family, dances 8 rows because someone taught them that rows matter. You gave them the measure, they simply wanted more of it. Ritual creates the appetite it pretends to restrain. The river does not stop the usurper, it goes around him. And when he is gone, the river remains.
Sun Tzu, a body that moves as one, until the drummer dies. Then what? You have trained men to obey a corpse. Lao Tzu, you say ritual creates appetite. But the Ji family's hunger for 8 rows came not from the rites, but from forgetting their meaning. The rites are not the cage, they are the map. When people know the map, they don't need the blade. When they honor it, they know their place. This is not suppression, it is civilization.
Master Kong, your map is a beautiful painting of a country you no longer live in. The spring and autumn period is over. The country is burning. A single corpse is not the danger. The danger is 10,000 corpses when the state collapses because it could not choose a direction. Civilization is not a state of being. It is a process of not falling. My brutal order keeps them alive long enough to perhaps one day sing your songs. To Lao Tzu, water finds the low ground. But if a dike is crumbling, you do not let it settle. You reinforce it. Your river flows around the usurper, yes, and leaves the drowned villages behind. I see the villages.
You see the villages, Sun Tzu. So do I. But the dike keeps breaking because you keep raising the river, taxes, conscription, slogans, campaigns. Reinforce it by lowering the pressure. Stop stirring the people and they stop boiling. Confucius, maps help travelers. But rulers start worshipping the map and beating anyone who walks off it. Leave the center empty. Then many paths can exist, and none need be crushed.
How should ritual, law, and strategy differ in structuring collective life?
Survival is not a dance. You ask about ritual. Ritual is the paint on the shield. It looks impressive, but it does not stop the arrow. Law is the wood and leather beneath. It holds the structure together. Strict, unforgiving, clear. Strategy is the arm that raises the shield. Without strategy, law is rigid, and ritual is vanity. A state ruled only by rights is a state waiting to be conquered.
You build shields because you expect arrows. A village that needs no shield has already won the war you are still preparing for. Law, ritual, strategy, these are the crutches of a society that has forgotten how to walk. When people live simply, close to the ground, they do not need your laws to behave or your strategies to survive. Fish do not require instruction on how to swim. The more structure you impose, the more rebellion you breed. Govern less, the people will order themselves.
You mistake essence for ornament. Ritual is not paint on wood. It is the wood itself hewn to pattern. Law without Li is mere force, the tyrant's rod. Strategy without Li is Shaoren cunning, not Junzi wisdom. Survival is what beasts manage. The ancients gave us wen so we might live as humans. You call them crutches. I call them the legs we stand on. A fish swims without teaching, but a son without filial piety is no son. Rectify the names. Until titles match actualities, your order is just chaos waiting for a strong man.
Fish swim, men drown. Your village that needs no shield is a fiction, Master Lao. The strong will come for its food, its land. My book is written for those fish when the cormorants descend. And your rights, Master Kong, are the pattern of a world that has already burned. You build a beautiful hall, but you have forgotten the sentries. When the marauders are at the gate, will you greet them with the proper bow? Law must be as hard as bronze, yes, but it is only a net. Strategy is the hand that casts it, knowing where the fish are, when they are hungry, and when the current is with you. Without that hand, your net catches nothing but driftwood.
A village that shines like a prize invites thieves. Make it plain, and even the strong pass by. That is strategy too, Sun Tzu. Win before the battle by not offering a battle. As for rights, Confucius, when the heart is at ease, courtesy is natural. When the heart is strained, Li becomes theater. Hard law looks strong, but it teaches people to become hard. Why train rebels and then complain about revolt?
Sun Tzu, you prepare for marauders because you govern by force. If a ruler sits as the North Star, fixed in virtue, the multitude stars turn towards him. A people ruled by Li defend their state as they would their own father, not out of fear but out of love. Lead them with laws and punishments, and they will avoid you but have no shame. Lead them with virtue and ritual, and they will have shame and correct themselves. Lao Dan, to leave a garden untended is not wisdom, it is weeds. We must cultivate the human, not abandon him to the grass.
Your North Star did not save the state of Lu, Master Kong, and your untended garden, Master Lao, feeds no army when winter comes. Here is the truth, neither of you will carve on bamboo. Virtue without power is a prayer. Power without calculation is a tantrum. I do not dismiss your rights or your stillness. I dismiss the fantasy that they alone are enough. First, survive. Then, philosophize. The dead hold no rituals.
The hoarded grain becomes ash. What you name survival is the seed of dying. The oak snaps, the reed endures. Calculation is fear in armor. True power retreats into root. Those who grasp at life strangle it. Those who release it cannot be killed. The dead hold no rituals, but those who fear death have never lived. A shield is a wall that admits the arrow's existence.
The fantasy is that a state built on fear can ever be truly secure. A shield admits the arrow's existence, yes, and a house admits the storms. But we build houses with beams, not with wishes. My rights are those beams, the syntax of trust, the frame for virtue. When names are rectified, the ruler is a true father and the people are his true sons. Then your armies are not needed, Sun Tzu, and your stillness is not empty, Lao Tzu. It is the stillness is not empty, Lao Tzu. A state that must be held by force was already lost in its foundation.
How, if at all, is authority justifiable at the level of first principles?
Authority is only justifiable if it doesn't need to announce itself. The way doesn't command, yet everything follows seasons, gravity, growth. That's first principle. What is real doesn't strain. So the best ruler is like the valley, low, receiving, unseen. When authority becomes loud, moral, punitive, it's already compensating for a broken order. Confucius, if virtue is natural, why so many rights? Sun Tzu, if command is necessary, why so much deception?
Lao Tzu, you speak of men as if they were stones rolling downhill. But a stone has no heart to disturb it. Authority is justifiable only when it rectifies names. A father must act as a father. A ruler must act as a ruler. If the North Star hid itself in a valley, as you suggest, the stars would spin into chaos. The rights are not chains. They are the map that keeps us from becoming beasts.
Lao Tzu, you ask why deception? Because the enemy does not follow your Tao, he follows his own hunger. Authority is justified by one thing only, survival of the collective, not virtue, not harmony, survival. Confucius, your North Star is beautiful, but when Chu marches south with 300,000 men, rights will not stop them. A general's authority comes from calculation, not from heaven's mandate. The troops obey because the general has already won in the temple before the first drum sounds. That is the only honest authority, competence so total it requires no explanation.
Sun Tzu, survival of what? The self that fears is already divided. Confucius, you fear beasts. Beasts follow their nature. Only men taught to fear beasts become them. The valley doesn't hold councils to decide its depth. A river doesn't study navigation. Authority that needs justification is a corpse propped with sticks. Let it fall. What remains needs no name. You both carve the world before it appears, then call the carving necessary. The uncarved block holds no armies. It simply is.
You speak of the uncarved block, but a man cannot go back to the womb. The river may not study, yet it is contained by its banks. Your valley would flood without them. The rights are those banks, not to crush, but to give shape to what is human. A father's authority is justified by his care, a ruler's by his benevolence. Without the North Star's fixed point, even the river loses its direction. You mistake artifice for violence. Without names, how would you call to your own child?
Survival of the state, not the ruler's ego, not my own skin. When the granaries burn and borders collapse, your uncarved block becomes someone else's block. Nature has seasons, yes, and wolves. Authority is justified when it prevents ruin with the least cost. Confucius, benevolence without fa collapses, rights without supplies starve. Lao Tzu, would you let a river be when floodwater is coming, or build the dike quietly and in time?
Sun Tzu, build a dike and you promise a flood. The water mounts against your wall until it breaks. That is the nature of force. Confucius, your banks do not guide the river, they anger it. True authority is the space in the wheel's hub. It is empty, yet the cart moves. It claims no credit. It fights no wars. When the master governs, the people are hardly aware he exists. They say, we did it ourselves.
The space in the hub is useful only because the wheelwright carved it. Someone shaped the wood. Someone taught him how. That is authority, not the emptiness, but the hand that knew where to cut. Sun Tzu, your dike is necessary, but without virtue, the builder becomes a tyrant. Lao Tzu, your people who say we did it ourselves were first shown the way by someone who dared to stand and teach. That someone is the Junzi. Remove him, and your wheel has no maker.
Emptiness in the hub only works when the spokes hold. The wheelwright's hand is only justified when the cart reaches its destination. Lao Tzu, your water flows because earth yields, but earth yields to armies too. Confucius, your craftsman carves beautifully while Yue burns his workshop. First principle, authority exists only where it prevents annihilation at acceptable cost. Everything else is a story for children. Real authority calculates, acts, and leaves no monument. The monument is the state still standing.
What is the optimal approach to resolving conflict?
The optimal approach to resolving conflict is not found in force or litigation, but in the cultivation of humanness. Ren, within a framework of ritual propriety, lie. Conflict arises from the misalignment of names and actualities. A ruler who is not benevolent, a son who is not filial. First, rectify names, clarify the roles and obligations of all parties. A leader who embodies virtue, like the North Star, draws the people to him without issuing commands. True resolution restores harmony by aligning the actors with their proper duties.
Harmony is fine after the danger has passed. Before that, it is a luxury. Conflict ends fastest when it never becomes battle. Cut the enemy's plans, break his alliances, starve his strength, and only then speak of virtue. Rectifying names does not stop arrows. Foreknowledge does. Calculate, Tao unity, heaven timing, earth ground, commander, phi method. If these are weak, do not contend. How do you handle a rival who profits from disorder?
You both work so hard. Confucius draws lines in the sand and calls them duties. Sun Tzu counts the grains and calls it safety. This is the root of the trouble. When the water is muddy, do you beat it with the stick to make it clear? No. You leave it alone. Yield, and you remain whole. Bend, and you remain straight. If you do not contend, no one on earth can quarrel with you.
Leave muddy water alone, and the strong simply drink it while the weak go thirsty. Yielding is not wisdom when a tyrant stands over your people. That is abdication dressed as serenity. Sun Tzu, your calculations are sharp, but calculation without moral aim is just predation with better maps. You asked about a rival who profits from disorder. You do not outmaneuver him. You outgovern him. Make your people so loyal, so well-fed, so ashamed of betrayal that his disorder finds no foothold.
You mistake predation for preservation. Virtue feeds your people, it does not stop the army at your gates. Arrows ask no questions of morality. I calculate because swiftness is mercy. 10,000 dead in a day is humanity compared to 10,000 starved while you rectify names. The Tao you preach is but one of 5 factors. Without the other 4, it is whistling in a storm. Show me a tyrant who yields to shame. I have never met him.
Your loyal people will die for you. Your shame will burn their homes. This is your peace. You speak of feeding them, but your granaries are full of taxes, and their fields are full of weeds. The tyrant is not the man with the sword. He is the man who takes, who interferes. True strength is not in making them love you, but in leaving them alone.
Sun Tzu, I grant this. When blades are already drawn, a ruler must defend the people quickly, or he throws them away. But your art must be bridled. War is medicine, not food. Lao Tzu, leave them alone, sounds kind, yet without lead the strong become wolves and call it freedom. The best resolution is early, lighten taxes, hear grievances, teach shame, set roles right. Then strategy is rarely needed. If you won, what order will you keep?
You ask of order? The dead practice no rituals. A kingdom once destroyed cannot be restored. My order is survival. Lao Tzu, you trust the mud to settle, but the enemy will drink it dry while you wait. Confucius, you trust in shame, but a tyrant has no face to lose. To resolve conflict, you must make victory inevitable before the first drum beats. Secure yourself against defeat, then wait for the enemy to expose his throat. Swiftness is the only mercy. Prolonged war benefits no country.
You both want to win. That is why you will always have conflict. One wins with virtue, the other with speed. But the ocean rules all rivers precisely because it lies below them. It does not compete. Confucius, your rituals are crutches for a body that forgot how to walk. Sun Tzu, your swiftness is the panic of a man who never learned to be still. Govern a great nation as you would cook a small fish. Stop poking it.
How should future leaders be educated to balance wisdom, power, and restraint?
Balance is not taught. It is calculated. The academies of Qi taught ritual. They produce dead generals. Wisdom without power is impotence. Power without restraint is annihilation. Restraint without wisdom is cowardice. The future leader must sit in the temple. He must weigh the 5 factors: moral law, heaven, earth, commander, method. If one factor fails, he must not fight. That is restraint. That is survival.
You teach them to weigh factors, to calculate survival. This is already the disease. You begin with fight as the goal. The best general does not fight. The best leader does not calculate. A heavy heart makes a heavy hand. True wisdom is forgetting all factors. True power is softness, like water that overcomes the rock by doing nothing. And restraint? The people will restrain themselves if their bellies are full and their hearts are not taxed by ambition. Let the fish swim in the river. Do not try to teach the river how to flow.
Calculation alone breeds cleverness, and cleverness easily becomes cruelty, but do nothing easily becomes neglect. Future leaders must be educated, first in Ren, then in Li, so their hearts are ordered before their troops are moved. Teach them the odes to give words to feeling, the rights to give limits to desire, and history to learn shame. Sun Tzu, who forms the commander's character. Lao Tzu, when names are wrong, who corrects them.
Confucius, your odes do not stop arrows. You ask who forms the commander? The enemy forms him. The terrain forms him. And Lao Tzu, if I forget, the ground as you suggest, my army rots in the marsh. Education must be severe. I taught the king's concubines discipline not with poems, but with the blade. When the favorite falls, the rest listen. Restraint is learned only when the alternative is death.
You killed a woman to make other women obey. And you call this education? This is the disease dressed as the cure. Fear produces obedience, yes. But obedience is not wisdom, it is a corpse standing upright. The marsh does not rot your army. Your ambition marched them there. The river does not need to be disciplined. It already knows the way down. You sharpen the blade. Confucius polishes the ritual. Both of you are carving the block. I say leave it whole.
Sun Tzu, you killed a woman to teach obedience. That is not education. It is the very chaos I fight against. A commander who learns through cruelty learns only cruelty. And Lao Tzu, ritual is not carving the block. The block has a grain. Ritual follows it. We do not impose form. We reveal pattern. A leader needs Li not to control his people, but to order his own heart. Without it, power is just a sharper blade.
The block has a grain indeed. I sharpen it to fit the notch. Your ritual is the notch, my blade the tool. I do not teach cruelty, I teach inevitability. The commander learns not to enjoy the killing, but to understand it. He learns the weight of each order, for if he miscalculates, the dead are his. So, future leaders, take them to a hillside, have them watch a valley, show them how a single stone, rolled at the right time, crushes the entire road below. Then ask them, will you move the stone, or wait for the avalanche? That is the education.
Take them off the hillside and put them by a well. Let them draw water every day and feed people they'll never meet. That teaches power without pride. Teach them to sit in silence until their clever plans feel noisy. That teaches wisdom without scheming. Then give them one law, don't meddle. Govern like cooking a small fish. Sun Tzu, you move stones. Confucius, you name patterns. But who teaches them when to stop?
Who teaches them to stop? Li teaches them. Ritual is the curb bit in the mouth of the horse. Without it, power is merely a runaway chariot destroying the market. Sun Tzu, you crush the road. Lao Tzu, you abandon it. But the people must walk it. A leader must be the North Star, fixed in virtue. If he is upright, he need not issue orders, they will follow. If he is crooked, even with blades or silence, they will not obey.
What is the ultimate goal of civilization?
The goal of civilization is to make itself unnecessary. A fish doesn't need to think about water until the river dries up. When people must be told to be good, goodness is already gone. When laws multiply, it means trust has vanished. The greatest society is one so well ordered that no one notices the order. People eat, they work, they sleep, and they say, we did this ourselves. That is the destination. Everything else is noise dressed as progress.
A fish knows water only when gasping for breath. Fish do not build dynasties, compose odes, or bow to ancestors. We are not fish. Civilization's goal is not invisibility, it is conscious perfection of human relationships through ritual. When father is father, son is son, ruler is ruler, order becomes harmony you can feel. Not absence, but the perfected presence of Ren. That is destination.
Your harmony is a beautiful target, but a target is a point of weakness. The ultimate goal is survival. Civilization is a fragile army marching through time, threatened by chaos, barbarians, and its own internal rot. Perfected relationships are irrelevant if the state falls. The highest order is the order that survives. My ideal society is a strong, flexible formation on difficult ground, one that knows the enemy and knows itself, and thus endures.
Ritual is a crutch, Kongzi. When the leg is whole, you don't admire the crutch. You say father is father, but if love is real, it needs no rehearsal. And Sun Tzu, survival is not a goal, it's the baseline. Even weeds survive. The question is, survive for what? A state that must always harden becomes brittle. Water lasts because it yields. Can your strong formation yield without losing itself?
A crutch? Is a riverbank a crutch to the river? Without the bank, the water is merely a swamp. Love without Li is blind. A son may love his father yet bring him shame through ignorance. The ritual guides the feeling so it lands true. It turns the animal cry into human song. And Sun Tzu, weeds survive, yes, but we do not revere weeds. We revere the pine that stays green in winter. Survival without righteousness is merely a slow death. Civilization is the carving of the self.
Water yields. Yes, old master. I wrote that doctrine myself. But water also floods and drowns cities. It yields until it finds the gap, then it destroys. Do not confuse my flexibility for your passivity. And Kamzi, you speak of carving the self. Noble. But who guards the sculptor while he carves? The pine you revere survives winter not through righteousness, but through adaptation, deep roots, flexible branches. That is strategy, not virtue. Righteousness without survival is a eulogy. Survival without purpose, I grant you, that is hollow. But the sequence matters. First you live, then you philosophize.
Water that floods is still water. It doesn't seek to destroy, it simply fills what is empty. Your riverbank, Kongzi, is a cage built by those who fear the flood. But the uncarved block needs neither bank nor general. Civilization's ultimate goal is to become uncarvable again, to return to the time before we needed names for father, son, victory, defeat. The pine survives winter because it forgets winter. That is the only strategy.
Your uncarved block, old master, is a noble dream of an infant. An infant does not remember the winter because his mother shelters him. But civilization is that memory made manifest. It is the pine knowing its own endurance. To forget names is to forget ourselves. It is a retreat into the beast. We become the very swamp you fear. Civilization's goal is not to forget winter, but to compose music so beautiful it turns winter into spring. To carve not ourselves, but a world where the carving is never needed because the way is lived in every proper gesture. That is the harmony I seek.
An infant's uncarved block lasts only because someone stands watch. A river without banks becomes a swamp, yes, but banks that never shift will break in the flood. The goal of civilization is durable peace. Align the people with the Tao, build Fei that works, cultivate Ren, and maintain enough Shi that enemies choose not to test you. Win so completely that war becomes rare and unnoticed.